Hi everyone, if we could get our seats, take our seats so we can get started. Alright, thank you so very much. My name is Michelle and my company is one of the sponsors of Startup Grind. Really appreciate this great turnout here, supporting the startup community, as well as hearing the story of Travis. We're all very excited to hear your story. A little bit about my company. The reason why we're one of the sponsors of Exactly Code Manage of this amazing group is because we work with startup companies, small businesses, also medium-sized companies, and we help take on their HR, their payroll, benefits, 401k, workers' compensation. And by pulling all that together, it not only helps companies become more competitive, but also helps the business owners focus on their business so they can grow and they can have such great products come out and share their story as well. So, love to meet with everyone if I haven't met with you already, but this is really not about me. I know y'all are here for Travis, so at this point in time, I'm going to pass over the mic over to Kim.
Thanks, Michelle. We're actually going to have Kurt Wilkin, the CEO of HireBetter, come up and talk about HireBetter for a few minutes.
I don't think it's going to be a few minutes, but I just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to be part of Startup Grind. We brought Kim on board to HireBetter a few weeks ago, or a month or so ago. It's been fantastic. We love being part of this community. We work exclusively with high-growth companies, typically a little larger than startups. We help them scale. And we found that there's just not a very good spot in the market for recruiters that actually help companies be strategic about their talent. So we're bringing a kind of change in the discussion when it comes to talent. And I'll leave it at that. It's a very short commercial, but I'd love to hear what Travis has to say.
Well, thanks, Travis, for being here with us. Everybody, let's give Travis a warm start and welcome.
Rally or something? Rally towels?
All right, so we want to learn about you today. So let's talk about your background, where you grew up, your family, and that type of thing.
Wow, how long do you want to last? I've got 400 family members in the just immediate family. So, no, I grew up in Utah. Actually, I was born in Taylorsville, right in the middle. It's really exploded there, actually. I was there, went to university there, and then I got a Ph.D. at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Went to the cold north. Loved Minnesota, actually. I was at the Mayo Clinic because I wanted to get out of electrical engineering. And I was a master's degree student in electrical engineering. I did double majored in math and electrical engineering. Got a master's in electrical engineering. I studied satellite scannerometry, and I was a scientist. I really fell in love with getting information from data. My master's degree advisor was studying satellite scannerometry, looking at ice over the ocean. I did wind estimation over the ocean. Just loved using information from data. I really got into that. But I wanted, after my master's degree, to get into medicine. I did like the fact that most of my friends were going to, I don't know if anybody's here from Raytheon or Boeing or some of those companies, they were going to basically build missiles. And I wasn't really excited about that. We've gotten really good, right, at the Kalman filter and feedback analysis and robust control. You can actually do a pretty good job of targeting. But I wanted to take that information, that knowledge about applied mathematics and really apply it to other problems. So I got into biomedicine. So I went to the Mayo Clinic to do biomedical engineering, and there studied segmentation, image processing, MRI, ultrasound, and I did a Ph.D. that merged ultrasound data and MRI data to try to find, the goal was to find cancer in the body by watching, but basically you would take a speaker, just imagine a speaker at 400 hertz, you can hear it on the radio, and it wiggles tissue. Then we could, using MRI, you could see the sound wiggling inside of somebody. And then I took that data and then tried to invert it to find stiffness. Basically take the wave image and construct a stiffness image. I really had a great time with that. A little too much fun. It was actually at that time when I was doing that I came across Python. I was really trying to figure out how to do 5-dimensional data inversion. And I was using C, and I was using MATLAB, I was using Perl, and I was finding that I was running out of memory, and so I wanted to find something else, and I encountered Python. I loved the syntax, loved the fact that I could be a scientist and be a programmer. I could still kind of think about my physics problem and then work on this large data problem. So I started to used Python, but then at that time there was a whole lot that wasn't being done. And so I got, I had to do a whole lot of writing of code, but that kind of gets into a different part of the conversation. So that's kind of a little bit about me, where I came from. I was 7th of 10 children. My father was a computer programmer using COBOL. We lived in the kind of, in Austin, we'd be on the east side. We were on the west side of Salt Lake, the east side if we were in Austin. Didn't know that we didn't have much money. I really enjoyed my growing up experience. Had a great family. My dad did fine. We just had 10 kids, so it was a lot of mouths to feed. Then I got married young. Got married when I was 21, and I have a beautiful wife. Amy's her name, and we have 6 children together. My oldest is 20, and my second is going to college. So actually, I love science, but I knew that I wanted a family. I came from a big family, wanted a family, so I said, I got to make some money. And so that's kind of been on my mind all the time, is how to be a scientist but also make some money. It's kind of driven a lot of my thinking, actually, at a very fundamental level for a long time.
Sure, okay, thanks. So growing up with a dad that wrote code, did you have an interest in writing code, or did you ever try it when you were young?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, Dad, even though he didn't have much money, he bought me a Timex Sinclair, me and my brother. And I don't know if anyone knows the Timex Sinclair. Remember that? It had 2 kilobytes of memory came with it. And if you paid an extra $50, you got the 16 kilobyte memory expansion pack. 16K. Now, who would ever need more than 16K, right? Or 64K. But that was awesome. And that's where I first learned what a spreadsheet was. And I really got excited about that. I learned BASIC. I tried a couple of stuff. We upgraded to a TI-49A or TI-49A, I think it was called, that had sprite graphics, and I could actually do assembly programming. I did tinker. I tinkered a lot with programming as a kid, but just tinkered. I mean, this is back before anything, except you had to do it all in your house. But no, I had a lot of fun with that. I was into math. I was into computers. Dad did COBOL programming. I didn't know that for many years later, because I would not have liked what he did, but I liked if he was just tinkering and playing with computers.
So when you went to college, what was behind you studying electrical engineering?
Oh, beautiful question. I don't know. So anybody taking physics here? At Berkeley, they teach a course out of, it's a blue book. Oh, I wish I remembered it. I used to have the name. So he taught me that electromagnetism and special relativity are deeply connected. That actually, once you understand Maxwell's laws, that special relativity, Einstein, just falls out. The speed of light is constant every reference frame because it's predicted by electromagnetic equations, by Maxwell's equations. I love that. And I got so excited about electromagnetism, probably because at the same time I learned vector calculus. It was my freshman year of college, and I took vector calculus, saw how it worked, and I was so excited about it. I wanted to be a physicist. The question came to me at that moment, I still articulate it at that moment. I was 19 years old, 18 years old, and said, wow, all this is built from what charge? Electromagnetic charge, what's charge? Still don't know the answer to that question. Anybody have a good answer to that question? What is charge? Right, it's this thing that basically has this really impressive influence throughout the world. These days comes in pairs. Never answered that question. I wanted to be a physicist, but again, grew up poor, knew I wanted a family, wanted to be an engineer because I figured I'd get a better job as an engineer.
So
Actually, that's sad. Yeah.
So you were thinking electrical engineering, but then...
Electrical because of charge, electromagnetism. Electromagnetism.
So then walk me through that thought process from how you went from that to computer science and big data.
Yes, that's part of the story I was telling, right? It was, it's been a long process, actually. It really, because as a scientist, it sort of led me from, as electrical engineer, electrical engineering is a great career, actually, if you're thinking about your students and the engineering scientists folks, because you learn a ton. I learned a lot of things that are still useful today: linear algebra, signal processing, probability theory, a lot of fundamental concepts that really are at the heart of what we call machine learning or advanced analytics today. It's actually embedded in my curriculum in undergraduate degree of electrical engineering. So I really fell in love with signal processing, electromagnetics, and inverse theory, probability theory. In my master's degree, when I studied wind estimation over the ocean, we had huge data sets we were getting on tape reels, and I was basically using computers to do something with that information. Much like a lot of the scientists and physicists in the world today. So what's happened is kind of the business intelligence world is caught up with the scientists, right? And so they call it advanced analytics, is stuff the science has been doing for decades, right? And so essentially, big data came to me, right? I was sort of been sitting here, I've just been here playing with my computer programming and some Python, and then also needing to figure out how to make money. So I'm constantly looking for opportunities. And realizing that the world of business intelligence, which has a lot of money being thrown at it, is suddenly sitting in my backyard, right? Where I've been playing for a long time. And so that was like, okay, well, we just need to, open the canopy and invite the guests in, and maybe put on some music, change slightly the lab coats, take the lab coat off, put the jacket on, and just orient a little differently. So that's kind of how I've really been in that camp of a scientific computing since I was in grad school. So how I got to be in business is that I wanted to be an electrical engineer. Then I went and I got a job as an assistant professor right out of college. I didn't expect that. I was a pretty good student, so I was sort of interested. My alma mater was interested in me because they saw, hey, he was a really good student. He's off, got his Ph.D. Now let's bring him back, and he could be a professor and get all that grant money from governments. Right. The trouble is, when I was a university professor, when I studied, I also kind of got excited about markets and got excited about entrepreneurism and entrepreneurial efforts. And once I got back to university, I was sort of, I don't really want to be a professor. I don't want to be just chasing government grants my whole life. I want to basically be an entrepreneur. I want to create markets, and I loved the capital market structure. I love the idea of markets. I love what they mean. It's the energy that really drives human progress, and I love that. And I understood that when I was getting my Ph.D. kind of accidentally. Really driven by open source, curiously enough. Because during my PhD, I loved open source. I loved the fact I could get Linux, I could play with it. I loved Python, I grabbed Python, I could play with it. I could release stuff on the net. I had lots of worldwide friends because I wrote software that they started to use, and as early as 1999. A package that became SciPy really started in 1999 when I was a grad student, just putting stuff on the net because I wanted to. Because it was like, oh, this is fun, and I want to get feedback on it. And I was just sharing like a scientist does. And when people started using it for a lot of other things. So the user community kind of grew around kind of the effort that I was putting into that. The seeds for kind of getting out of academia really were planted there because I could see that my academic career was leading to papers and kind of self-promotion that hopefully somebody will use someday, whereas my software career was leading to, hey, people are actually using this stuff, and it's helping them. I remember, so when I went back to become a professor, there was sort of a tension there that just existed for a long time. My faculty cohorts were like, how come you're not going out for more government grants? What are you doing writing this software for? I was putting out this software. SciPy emerged in 2001 while I was a professor. I kind of put it together with a colleague of mine here in town, Eric Jones from NthOt. We organized SciPy in 2001. And then the array library needed work, and so I spent time during a class that fell through. I ended up spending time starting the NumPy array, kind of merger of numeric and num array, pulled those together to NumPy. And I put that out there. And at the same time that my faculty would say, they were kind of saying, we're not sure about you. You're smart, but you're not productive like getting grant proposals out. And I'm not sure, at that same time I went down to a SciPy conference, one of the early SciPy conferences, and presented NumPy to people and said, hey, here's a merger of the array object in Python that'll help. And I got a standing ovation, right? The only standing ovation I ever had in my life. And it was actually very moving. I mean, there's nothing like that kind of, hey, I did something for people, and they really care about it, right? And it just, at that point, you're like, that's what I need to be doing. I need to be doing things that actually help people the very best way I can. So I've essentially been driven by this desire to figure out, how do I get more people to write more, make code available to people. They can get their jobs as open source, as paid for products. I knew that's what I needed to do. And so basically I left academia, came out to Austin to join my friend Eric at NthOt. I was there for about 4.5 years. Moved out here in 2007, was with him for 4.5 years. He was promoting SciPy. He was doing a boutique consulting company around that, using kind of sophisticated rich client, thick client applications around the scientific tool stack, SciPy and NumPy that we built. Again, the advanced analytics, but for scientists. And during that time, I was watching this big data movement. About 2011, I saw Strata emerge, and my friend that I met at NthOt named Peter Wang. He left NthOt in 2011. He went to Strata, reported back, and he said, we got to do something about this, because Strata's huge, and nowhere on the vendor floor is anybody talking about Python. They're all talking about Hadoop or R or this thing or that thing. Nobody's talking about Python on the vendor floor. But if you go to the talks, like 50-60% of the people are talking about Python. That's what they're using to actually do their data analysis and show their results. So that was a big revelation, like, oh, there's a real opportunity here, we need to do something about that. So ended up, given the circumstances, the funding situation, then thought we needed to kind of branch out and start another company. So Peter and I in 2012 started Continuum. Basically to say this whole scientific stack that's been available, I had a big part in writing and being a part of growing that community in SciPy and NumPy. Fortunately, a lot of other people joined that. We have another conversation about open source and about how that works. And so I've been in the thick of this for a long, long time and realized this is going to be helpful to a lot of other people if we can just package it, deliver it, and then innovate around that as well. So long answer, sorry about that, it got me started.
So it seems like you had a really big interest in big data before it became popular.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So, big data means a lot of these different people. I have a lot of, we can talk about that at length to a lot of people, and I can go into there's a lot of nuance, a lot of structure to that question.
Sure. So when you found Peter, was he as passionate about Python as you were?
Yes, he was. Peter was passionate about Python and visualization, actually. So it's a really, really nice mixture because it's kind of like me as the machine learning, inverse problems, array computing guy, and he was very passionate about interactive visualization. He was a physics major, had a lot of understanding of the scientific domain, but was actually a better computer scientist than I was, had done a little more software development. I got a lot of my software development experience while writing NumPy and SciPy, but really kind of learning from other open source innovators, and then relying on my old C and my AP computer science class from senior year of high school, just a little tiny bit of computer science. He was very passionate about Python, mostly because people ask, well, why Python? Why do you care about that? It's an interesting question. Python's not perfect, but the thing that it does really well is it gets out of the mind, it gets out of your way. If you're a domain expert, you want to care about what you're doing. The syntax matters. Like, a lot of people don't get that, and they'll throw code in your face, and you have to then wait, what is this? I have to then learn this other thing. But Python, at least for English language speakers, gets out of your way. I don't think you could say that doesn't get out of Mandarin speakers' way. I think you have to know English. But it kind of fits your brain. A lot of people say that sort of thing. And when I first started using Python, little anecdote, I used Perl a year before that when I was doing satellite scatterometry research as a master's degree student. Used Perl, wrote a script, a year later came back to it, had no idea what I'd written. Just completely, it looked like gibberish to me, I had no idea what it was. And so, had that same experiment as a Ph.D. student with Python. I wrote some Python, a year later came back to it and knew exactly what it was. I could see it and understand it, even having been away from doing it every day. And that was really what sold me on Python. Said, oh, this is going to last. This is going to make a difference. Because as a user who wants to get other stuff done, Python is a place where I can organize my thoughts and then come back to them and still understand them later.
Sure. Okay. So you and Peter started Continuum in 2012.
Started 2012. That's right.
2012. And then so in 2011 was Peter working somewhere else?
He was, yes. I got him to contract back to me at NTHOT for a little while because I was actually president of NTHOT at the time. I had helped Eric do some investment buyout situation, and I was actually senior leadership over there. And so it took, I kind of knew by 2011 I wanted to start a company and do something else, but it took a while. It wasn't easy to walk away from all that. I had family money, invested all this stuff. It was actually, it was my first experience kind of doing company financing. So I knew we wanted to, so I got him to consult back with me for a little while, and we kind of talked a little bit, what should we do, how will we do this, but yeah, he basically, the way he puts it, he was on a sabbatical for a year. He went and, we actually have a library in-house of all the papers that he read during that time. It's fantastic. He went down to fourth. He learned, he talked about all kinds of different language approaches, all kinds of visualization approaches. Just tons of ideas just emerged from that year, I think, that he was kind of on his own. And I didn't find out about this until we started the company. I realized, whoa, you've got all this stuff you've been sitting on. And then we had basically still been making sense of it the past 3 years, actually.
That's great. Okay, so you started Continuum, and kind of walk us through what that was like. I mean, was it scary?
Oh, yeah, of course it was scary. It was once said, never start a company unless you absolutely can't think of anything else. I heard that, and so at the time I'm old. Like, I looked around at startups and they're all, they're 20-somethings or 30. I seriously was Googling about, wait a minute, does anybody start a company when they're in their 40s? does this happen? Some folks started families of hands here. I mean, it's nerve-wracking because my kids I had 6 kids. My wife, she's just sitting there. She's a wonderful lady, actually, and if she were here, she's a complete gem. I tell a story about how I wrote SciPy while I was doing my Ph.D. I should have done my Ph.D. in 3.5 years and actually got a job and not been so far in debt, but ended up taking 4.5 years, and she didn't really know I was kind of wasting my time writing this open source stuff. But she's been very patient, very patient. So it was a big risk. Didn't have money. Now, what helped is we were able to basically organize some angel money that gave us a little bit of runway. And so I jumped off into it. Well, I know I have a little bit of salary for a few months. That's it, right? And you're thinking, I guess if it goes badly, I can always contract. It's kind of the hope.
Sure. So how did you go about raising the angel money?
The phone book.
Really?
Yeah, it's called the Friends, Family, and Fools round, right? So basically what it came down to is Peter had a set of people. So he had some relatives that he went and they had some money, and then I went to the same relatives and they had no money, but I got more out of them somehow. I went to people, one of my brother-in-law actually, so this is kind of embarrassing because 8 months after he basically took I learned how to invest 401k money. If anybody wants to have ideas about that, I can show you how to do it. It's very, it's not trivial, but it's definitely doable. Has some consequences, but you can manage it. So a lot of people are sitting on 401k money and they're like, well, I don't know, nothing's happening to it. It's not doing well in the market. And I could convince several people to take part of that and roll it into this startup. Now, one person actually ended up putting his whole 401k into the startup. I didn't realize that until he was diagnosed with frontal temporal lobe dementia 3 months after the transaction completed. So that was a little nerve-wracking to go, okay, so your whole retirement is resting on this.
No pressure.
No pressure, right, exactly. So it was nothing like that. But we had a really successful round. And then we had another from NThought days, the founder of NThought, actually, who had been gone on to other things. He knew both Peter and I, and was basically like, yeah, if you guys start something, I'll invest. And so he grabbed some family money and put it in. So kind of the 3 sources. We were able to put together a decent angel round, actually. That basically, I think we raised $2.5 million. Not all at once, mind you. It was like we raised like $500K early, and then eventually by the end of 8 months, we had the $2.5 million, $2.25 million. So it was a lot of, that was nerve-wracking for a little while. But you have faith, you believe. I definitely have a strong opinion. Don't act out of fear. You've got to act on faith. You got to act on what you believe to be right. But you have to care about it. Like it cannot be. It can't just be wishy-washy. You've got to very clearly have a vision of what you're trying to accomplish, and there's a passion to make sure it happens. Like that's the only thing that gets you through.
Okay, so then can you walk us through like what you did with that money? Did you hire people?
Yes. Yeah, we spent it. It's funny that. So we had basically a barbell strategy. I didn't get that term until I read Black Swan. Anybody read The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb? So he talks about this Black Swan strategy, the approach to risky ventures. Right? You basically it's the barbell strategy. You basically have one pawn on the sort of exposure to large valuations, then you have another pawn on downside risk, hedging downside risk. So I knew that we could do consulting. I understood that market. I understood the value prop. At least to a certain scale, I knew how to do that. So I said, well, we can do that. And then we had some product ideas that we could also pursue and reinvest the revenue from consulting into that. So I knew that with the $2.25 million, we could build up a bootstrap consulting group that then would help, the revenues would help fund product. So that was our game plan from the beginning. And it only worked, frankly, because of all the effort I'd spent. For me, it only worked because of all the effort I'd spent on NumPy and SciPy for 15 years before that, or 12 years before that. So because people knew who I was, because I had NumPy, so it got me in the door. It didn't bring the money in, but it got me in the door so we could have a conversation. And then that led to a few opportunities that then helped things grow. So we ended up, actually, CoAdvantage is interesting. One of the things for me that really helped was using a PEO, professional employment organization like CoAdvantage. I think if you are in a startup, it really takes a lot of HR stress off the table. You basically just hire an HR department and you just have to worry about the people, what they're going to do, not all whether you're compliant, their benefits. So it let us hire people and give them benefits who otherwise we wouldn't have been able to do. So we did. We hired people. I remember that first time, for us, we had to get to 10 people. Now there are options, you can have 5 only, I think, to join one of these. But 10 was kind of the entry point, and we got to 10 people pretty quickly. Yeah, it was fun.
Sorry, can I ask you a question? Were they tech? Were they developers?
No,
people?
it was a combination. Let's see, probably there was one. When we first started, there were only 4 of us. Really, they were all tech. 4 of us were all tech. Basically, there were 3 founders technically. We hired one more person pretty quickly to get to 4, and he had a helper who was 5, and then. Then we hired basically at the same time I started NumFocus, actually, the same time I started Continuum. NumFocus is a battery die? Sorry. Does that work? Sorry about that. Now you're going to have to steal it from me. You'll never get the mic back. So NumFocus is a nonprofit foundation dedicated to accessible science, reproducible accessible science. It was the way, so I had spent a long time in academia building a community around NumPy and SciPy. And I knew I wanted to build a company that took those and solved pain points for enterprises. But I wanted to separate the community building from the company building at the very beginning. Because they have different cadences and different needs and different development paths. And it can be really confusing to people if you're together. So I wanted them 2 separate, and I wanted to help both of them. I fell in love with open source, and my desire is that there's a lot of open source in the world. I really love it when there's open source in the world. But it has to be produced, and somebody has to pay for that. So I also want there to be companies that are successfully doing useful things in order to produce that open source. And NumFocus was basically a foundation that could support the community growth. We started that, hired somebody, used some of that money to hire somebody to run NumFocus. So she was one of the first Leah Simon's her name. She was one of the first employees, but she spent all of her time on NumFocus. Then I hired a salesperson pretty quickly, someone that I had known and worked with. And that turned out to be a critical key decision, actually. It was really, really valuable. So that was kind of early stages. Then I had somebody who was a recruiting tech organization and a controller. So we kind of had an admin team of about 5, and then about 5 people who were 4, and then about 6 who were developers, and the developers grew pretty steadily quickly. We ended up about 30 at the end of that first year, 20 of them were developers.
So then at that point, did you bring on more salespeople? Or talk to us about how you got from like 10 to, how many people do you have now? 100?
We have 140 now.
140. Yeah.
Yes. So we are 140 now, although 60 of those have been added in the last 4 months. So that's a little bit, yeah. So we've been a pretty busy summer. So I mean, my timeline's probably wrong here. I'm thinking that the first year we ended with about 20, and then the year after that, so that was 2012. The year after that, I think. So in the first year, we were actually. One of the things I knew I wanted to do in building the company was actually solve what I consider to be the data siloization problem. The fact that people have problems they need to solve, but how they write their queries, how they talk to data totally depends on where the data is stored. If you got your data in Redis, you got your data in Oracle, you got your data in flat files on disk, what you do to inspect and get the data out of there is totally different. You actually write queries, even though they're the same kind of analysis, it's different what you write. And so we had an idea, it's now kind of emerging in Blaze, of kind of connecting the world's data through a data web. Basically making it easy for people to write high-level expressions and then pull that data out. That's really what drove us starting Continuum, was to create that technology and bring it to fruition. So we spent a ton of time and effort. We wrote a DARPA grant, got some funding for that. We spent a lot of developer resources around pushing that idea. So for the first 18 months, people looked at us and said, "You guys are a research company, or what are you doing? You're just an R&D group." And it was true, right? We spent a lot of time, basically, it felt like graduate school, and we were just pushing on research for a long time. Now, on the other hand, we were doing that as the exposure to the upside. We were also building a consulting company with the sales group and finding contracts and solving them and pursuing those contracts. One of them was a DARPA grant that really, really helped. So we didn't hire another salesperson, probably another 2 for 2 years. Right, that one salesperson helped us for the most part until we rolled out got ready to roll out our enterprise software story. Basically, once we had some software to sell, then we hired additional salespeople. That was in 2013. So year 1 and 2 years in.
Okay, yeah, it works. Okay, so at what point did you look for, after the angel rounds, did you look for additional funding?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we wrestled back and forth because part of us is like, okay, we're gonna bootstrap. It's hard too because you're trying to find a product that actually you can sell. We knew we wanted to make a product company. We didn't want to be just consulting. But to make a product company, you got to make a product and who wants to buy, right? And it actually turned out to be pretty tricky, especially in a world with a lot of free software. What are people actually going to buy from you? There's certainly verticals, but we're a tools company. We kind of provide. Many people who are successful selling specific vertical software to like a banking industry or to the oil and gas industry or whatnot. We didn't, we had some experience there, like in finance, we had a lot of experience. We could have tried that direction, but we knew we had this technology we wanted to bring to the world. So we had to be a tools company. And so we started by essentially, well, where can we sell on top of that? Well, we can sell optimization. We can sell, a module that makes it fast and allows you to talk to the GPU. So we wrote that. I've lost train of thought, actually. What were you asking?
Optimization. About raising funding.
Raising funding, yeah. So because that product, basically, it was a question all in our minds. We thought we probably will need funding. It's actually one of the reasons we left our consulting company before is there we would never have raised money. Like that was just never on the table. But Peter and I both knew that we might need to. If we really wanted to, if we found something, we found a market positioning, we might need to raise money to really lift it to where it needed to be. So it was always in the back of our minds. I started probably in 2013 sniffing around, kind of building relationships with ABCs, just talking to people, kind of sending emails out. You get introductions to other people. It's a bit of a game, right? The whole raising money world it's big. First of all, there's thousands and tens of thousands of places we can get money, but there's a lot of correlation in that they're kind of sniffing around the same meat, right? And if you're not that meat, it's kind of like, yeah, what are you? And I want to really talk to you. Big data helped because if you said, oh, we're big data analytics, I'm interested. So we actually got some introductions, introductory contacts. Didn't have any bites for a long time. And people were like, okay, yeah, call me later. You got the VC handoff. I remember reading about this. Like, oh yeah, they were really excited. Yeah, they'll do that, but unless they actually give you a term sheet or an LOI or something, they're not. They're just being polite. So we got a lot of those conversations. But we just kept in touch. Ended up meeting somebody that we did receive funding this summer. Actually closed in March. Started that process in last August, actually, when somebody who I had previously met, he was at one VC firm. He'd moved to another VC firm. Remembered us. And then an opportunity arose that he said, I think they'd be a good fit for this. And he reached out to us and said, hey, we have this XIR program, they call it. General Catalyst has an XIR program they call Executive in Residence, where they pull in a CEO who's been successful somewhere. And this CEO that General Catalyst had a relationship with was Lanham Napier from Rackspace. Lanham, I don't know if anybody knows Lanham, he's well known in San Antonio. He took Rackspace from I don't know exactly where they were when he started, but somewhere in the tens of millions of revenue to $1 billion in revenue before he left a couple of years ago. So very, knows how to build a company. And General Catalyst partners with people like that and kind of connects them to usually growth companies. And so Donald made the introduction to us. Donald Fisher was the General Catalyst partner. He used to be at Greylock. When I saw him and met him, and he said, hey, Lanham might be interested in you guys. So we met with Lanham, talked at length about our dreams and what he's trying to do and what we're trying to do, and we hit it off, and he kind of made a connection, and eventually we figured out a deal. So yeah, it was part of our thinking for a long time. The funding story actually has a long history. It was messy, though, before we got there. I had to go back to angels and get more. I got convertible notes, because along the way, you're basically, I guess it was something I knew about but hadn't really contemplated. So we were actually pretty successful bootstrapping, and our accounts receivable was growing to about 1.5 million. Okay, so you raise 2.25 million, your account receivable grows to 1.7 million. guess where all your capital went? It went to this working capital problem. And now basically, I only had 500,000 to spend before we had spent a little more than that. We'd spent, we'd lost about 1.3 million. So I had to go back to the investors and some of the angels. I had to pick up a few new ones, and I had to get convertible notes, right? And I did that twice before we found a VC opportunity. So it was not, there were a lot of times when you're basically, when we got paid and how we got paid mattered quite a bit. We never ran out of money, but there were definitely times when we needed to get paid by our clients, or we would have been struggling, or I'd have been calling somebody to see if they had a little bit of money. So it was definitely bootstrapped, definitely stressful, definitely, but yet I had a lot of confidence in what we were doing. I felt like we were doing exactly the right thing, so that really helped. I never felt like it was wrong. It was stressful, but I felt this is right. We're doing exactly the right thing. I loved what we were doing, so I don't know, somehow it just didn't matter.
It was worth it.
It was definitely worth it. I figured everything's going to work out. We're going to make this work. A lot of probably foolish, but self-confidence.
Sure. What advice would you give to people who are looking for funding for their startup?
Talk to people. Be patient. Don't be persistent. But also understand who the people are that are interested in what you're doing. It's definitely a structured capital world out there. Not everybody's going to be interested in what you're doing, and finding people who are is critical. So how do you do that? I think you network. You talk to as many people as you can. I was looking constantly for new approaches. Today, actually, it's an interesting environment for fundraising. I mean, there are things like AngelList. There are organizations out there. You can actually market. It used to be you couldn't publicize. You couldn't go after. You couldn't advertise money that you're raising money. Now you can legally. It's a question of socially, is it the right thing to do? Is it going to are you going to be a pariah because you put yourself out there? Hey, I'm raising money on Craigslist. Probably not exactly the place to put it. But there are things like Angels List. There are places you can go to network and find. And I found actually there's a lot of them. The deeper I looked, the more I could find the right things to search for, and the more I could It was just impressive to me how structured the capital is. That's what my mind was open to. Was just it's very it's not whatever you think the capital structure is. It's bigger than that, and it's broader than that. I guess I can comfortably say that. There's just all kinds of opportunities out there. You just have to meet the right people, and it's always a conversation. It's always a merging of dreams.
Well, so we talked a lot about your history and kind of how you got to where you are today. Can you quickly walk us through your product and what Continuum
Oh, you bet.
does?
Yeah. So I don't know, quickly. You said quickly, right? Oh, okay. That's a good question. I should be able to. So we just spent a lot of money on a marketing firm to help us tone our message, so I should be able to do this fast. The elevator. So our goal is to give superpowers to people to change the world. Right? That's maybe corny, but we take it seriously because so it's really exciting to be able to write software that is on Mars. Right, that's on a rover on Mars, or that's actually in a space station, or that's helping people find cancer, or helping people find planets, or kind of in every field. The Tesla, it's helping people design electric cars. That's pretty cool, right? And so that's what we do. We help people. We connect people who are wanting to think about their problem, give them an ability to take all the data in the world and bring it to their minds. Kind of be that interface, and so that's our fundamental product is. So we give away a big piece of that for free, we just give it away, make it easy for everybody to get access to some of these tools, and then what we charge for is enterprise deployment, access to integration with your single sign-on inside of enterprise, optimized connectors to databases, optimized on GPUs or optimized runtimes. So basically, at the pain points where people will pay because it solves a business problem, they'll pay us. So our product, its whole goal though, is to help your best, smartest, brightest minds in your company do what they do best and do it faster and more efficiently.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I can go into a lot of detail. If you want to know visualization or big specifics about, I can go into a lot of detail, but that's the big picture.
I have one more question, then I'm going to open it up to the audience. So today, what does your role look like in the company, and what does Peter's role look like?
Oh, that's a lot of fun. Yeah. So early on, Peter and I were basically doing everything together. which is, but I love my relationship with Peter. It's actually, Lanham said, you guys are lucky to have each other, and it's absolutely true. We've been able to, I don't think I've met anybody who I can, we don't see eye to eye all the time, but we can quickly get past real issues, and we air them quickly, so they don't ferment and become like problems. So, but that's been the question: is how do we separate? We've kind of all had our interest. He in visualization, me, and so he's handled this visualization tool called Bokeh, which is a fundamental tool we put out in the open source right now. It lets you be a Python programmer or an R programmer and build JavaScript applications very quickly, and really nice interactive visualizations. I've been doing compilation of Python code, making it do array computing fast on the GPU. So we've kind of had our areas, and then data analysis. We kind of were both doing, initially I was CEO, he was president, and so there's jokes about that, right? So basically everybody's confused, nobody knows who to go to, right? And yeah, there was some of that, but surprisingly little, because we had people knew if you're on this project, go to Peter, if you're on this project, go to Travis, and then we could meet in the middle somewhere. Once we took on the money, we've been doing some organizational conversations here, right? Okay, where are we going to go? Where are you going to go? Peter's basically taking on the product delivery role, and I'm CTO, and kind of taking that role. And I've been still a CEO, kind of the last man. Okay, well, nobody else will take it, and so you have to do it. And actually, it was a really good question. I woke up after the funding, and I said, "What do I do now?" Right? I mean, okay, what? I actually found some really good books, though, that help. There's some really good books. So the book I read that was really exciting was The Advantage from Patrick Lencioni from the Table Group. Anybody read that? It's called The Advantage. And it was really, really helpful, because at that moment I read it, it underscored, it's basically, I have a copy here in my bag if anyone wants to see it. It's the 5 dysfunctions of team. And I found that my role is actually, how do I help the company organize? And I've really taken heart and ownership of the culture of the company. Peter really helps that too, but I've sort of intentionally created a culture in the company. I like our culture, I like what we created. A lot of it's driven by our desires and our passion. I want to make sure that stays with us. That we're not, one of the things that happens to companies, they grow, then they introduce HR processes and IT policies and next, and pretty soon you wake up and you're part of a company you don't want to work for anymore. So I'm kind of like, I want to protect that as long as I can. Make sure I still want to work at Continuum next year, and 2 years or 3 years from now. So that's kind of what I'm doing. And then I keep key roles in technology that I care deeply about, open source technology I care deeply about, kind of a community liaison. And I Blaze and NumPy, if anyone knows those projects, I still stay involved in those projects as kind of a team lead. And I'm getting out of the middle of our product, even because I'm kind of in the middle of one aspect of our product. I'm still there, and hopefully by the end of the year I'll be out of it, and just be able to give direction from more of a higher level, and other people can take that role. So that's a hard question. Actually, as you grow, you break yourself all the time. Like at every stage, you're going to break, and the stuff you did that worked before is not going to work anymore, and you have to redo it. That's kind of the story of a startup. So be ready to break things and be okay with it.
Well, thank you. We're so lucky to have you here today. I want to open it up to questions from the audience. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Travis?
You talked about your business model where you give away your tools, but you charge for some optimizations that the work that you do. So my question is the optimization work that you're doing, is it only catering to at the analytics level, or do you also have some optimization work that happens at the data ingestion, data transformation layer as well?
Yeah, it happens at every level. So it's a good question. Some of the optimizations, so we have, basically everything we do has some free component. Not everything, but a large number of things we do have some free component, and then there's things we charge for. And the things we charge for that's actually one of the areas we look at pretty hard and try to figure out, we have to think about that all the time. Because once you charge anything for it, you're going to reduce adoption, right? But people just won't do it because they don't want to get procurement, they don't want to buy anything. It's like they're not going to do it. So you try to find things that people have a strong pain point. So it's anything. It might be a lot of times it's a connector to a particular data source, right? We make that easier. A lot of times it's like ease of use. Currently, for example, we have a product called Anaconda Cluster that connects our Anaconda environments to the Hadoop ecosystem. And you can do that yourself, but it's really painful and probably take you all year unless you really know what you're doing. But we kind of make it easy so in one line you have a Spark cluster running, you can do advanced analytics very quickly. connecting it to your full Python stack. So that's an example of the, yeah, we work on ingestion, we work on the ingest side. One of the pieces is actually on going from S3, Amazon S3, taking your data and immediately into an analytics engine without going through an intermediate step, usually slower. So that's one area we charge for. Then the other thing we charge for is deployment in behind your firewall, kind of getting things. We give a lot of stuff away for free, but a lot of big companies don't want their people going to the web and just grabbing random stuff. They want to have it internal. So we can basically do an air gap deployment. We can put everything behind your firewall and you can have a managed delivery. Really help people understand what they're getting. License filtering. I mean, you're constantly in conversation with companies looking for what brings value to you as a company that leverages and builds on top of all the stuff that's available for free. And we've just started that. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. That's one of the reasons we raised money, is so that we can actually experiment there productively and keep growing that space.
Thank you.
I think you had a question.
Yeah, you talk a lot about the passion that you have for big data and the work that you're doing and all the programming aspects, and it's like just lights you up, you know, it's very obvious. And yet when I know, because I've worked with any number of startups, there's also the other side of it, which is all of the administration, day-to-day grind stuff that you gotta do for a business to actually function. And where did you, in this process, hit that wall of, I gotta hire the HR company, I gotta, hire a marketing guy, I gotta hire, whatever, and how did you deal with that? Because it's hard.
It is hard, it's absolutely hard. Absolutely hard. Couple things. One, it's not much of a wall other than a rich slurry you're constantly drudging through. I don't know, maybe it sort of felt like I'm always in that mode a little bit. Part of it was that when I came out of academia, so I'm creative, I'm sort of creative. I'm actually a sort of creative guy. I'm passionate about things, but I'm also kind of persistent and patient. If you look at SciPy, for example, I wrapped a whole bunch of Fortran code. And I didn't write it, I wrapped it by hand, right? And a real computer programmer would have figured out how to automate that crap, right? And they would have done that. I just did it by hand. So I kind of have a tendency just to say, I got to get this done, so how am I going to get it done? To get to where I want to be, to the next step. Sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it blocks you as well. So I guess I've always, when I did consulting at Unthought, I saw the value of other people pretty quickly, and so it's constantly kind of looking for those where do I plug people in? I actually found that one of the things I really get passionate about actually is getting people in positions where they can help, where they can be successful. I don't know if anybody here taken Strengths Finders is another thing I found that I really like. Strengths Finders is interesting. It's a little online test. They try to find 34 attributes in your top 5. And it's not the Bible, but it's an interesting, I like the idea of finding your strengths and playing your strengths. I think one of my strengths is actually a desire to surround myself with people. And I really get a lot of enthusiasm of finding the right people I'm always trying to figure out, hey, you've got some skills. How do you join with what I'm doing and we make something better together? So I think that early on, for example, we actually had a lot of admin help early on. Because of the people that I had found, there were several who were admin help. So I had somebody who helped me do this, get the PEO in place, and they were kind of doing that from the beginning. Pulled a salesperson in pretty quickly. He did a whole lot of that business administration stuff and a whole lot of that. So I think that's early on, finding people who can do that for you, and then any team is really built up people with multiple strengths, and just doing that early on. It's still constantly, my biggest challenge now is that organization story where I think we didn't do very well. Frankly, one of the failures I think we didn't invest in marketing. Well, we invested in a certain kind of marketing. We put out open source software, that was our marketing. Right? It's an effective marketing to a degree, but we kind of over-rotated on that one. And we didn't do a lot of just hard block and tackling around messaging, product messaging. We've been spending the past 6 months fixing that and realizing just how much work it is to go from where we were to where we need to be. And so I think we didn't quite make some of the good choices there and really finding people to help us early on. So I think it's a constant battle. And
it's always going to be something else.
Always be something else. Yeah, good question.
How has the new marketing message been received by both your current client base as well as
perhaps some new people that you're talking to?
It's a great question. I think the jury's still out. I don't think we know yet.
Yeah.
Like we're still not quite finished with our rollout. We spent 3 months. I spent the most money on marketing I ever had in my life, far beyond my comfort zone. If I hadn't had investors, we would not have done this. They pushed us to do this, basically. And but they did the right thing. It was exactly right. They really did a good job of really talking about us and trying to produce our story. We just barely changed our homepage. And then the rest of the site is still what it used to be. And we're planning for a rollout this end of this month with a whole new website, kind of explaining our story much better. So it's still a good question. I don't know yet. I'm very, very interested in the answer to that question.
And I guess, a second question on that is, or a follow-on question is, how has that impacted, the engineering and the product development, the internal culture, as it were?
It's a good question, because actually we've had engineers look at what we're doing in the marketing and go, oh, what is this fluff?
Yeah.
Right? What is that? Superpowers for data scientists? What? I'm going to wear a cape. It sort of seems fluffy. Actually, I found an inverse correlation between the more brilliant and sort of hard-focused folks, the less they like our marketing. But I've also found a correlation between those people in the world never spent any money with us either.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess to again add on to sort of the direction he was going. At the very beginning, you were talking about how some of your friends, they went to work for Boeing and they were doing this and stuff like that. I mean, big data has a lot of nuance to it, that's positive and negatives.
Yeah.
Are you worried about where the next stage could go with the data, government issues?
Oh, it's true.
Like that? Where do you see that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's the big data. The questions about big data and about there's Big Brother watching and big three-letter agency watching in the sky. And no, it's real. Like we have customers in those spaces, and so part of it is. Snowden came out and we have all this data, and if you've ever been in big data process, you realize how hard it is to actually get information out of this. So yeah, there may be information, but unless you're targeted, nobody really knows what's going on. There's no way they have any information about you, because the problem is too hard. We don't have those kind of tools available yet. Now, if you are targeted, if they actually want to find out, then there is a problem. I don't have answers to that. I don't have good answers to that. Part of it is when I was younger, I was more idealistic. When I was younger, I was very idealistic, right? I essentially, we can get into this a little bit more deeply, but I did not want to go after government grants because I was such a believer in the market, right? When I was a professor. So I gone after government grants as when I'm trying to feed my family.
Right.
I'm not going to change the world like that. I'm not going to, that's not who I am. There are other people who are better at that. I also recognize there's a diversity of perspectives out there. I think the key to counterbalancing is to actually democratize data access, right? Yes, there are going to be potential overreaches by large organizations. I think the key of counterbalancing that is to empower others, empower more people, fight back against it, basically. It's a little bit like, give other people the tools that they can actually do something meaningful, protect themselves, do whatever, rather than concentrate in the hands of just a few.
I guess I can say too, I've got kind of an interesting background coming from that space specifically, but private corporations are more likely to exploit that data than the government is. As Travis was saying, that's just noise to the government, unless you're being specifically targeted for a specific purpose. Yeah, maybe the data's there, but it's just noise, they don't care.
Yeah.
The private corporations care far more, and they're actually spending the most amount of money. They're spending far more than the government is to take that data and extract it and to use it for a specific purpose.
Usually it's marketing to you.
Yeah, usually
trying to get you to sell to buy something.
They just want to get you to buy
My
something.
question was, I guess,
Not
also
malicious,
sort of
but-
in thought of culture. Because as you're growing, you're going to have a culture, and it's that, your clients will also be relating to the culture.
I see. So
It's a
I had an example. I had somebody who worked with me who did not want to basically do any contracting for the federal government or any Department of Defense, any Army, right? He just refused. Is that kind of what you're talking about? The fact that may happen?
And I was curious, obviously you just hired 60 people in the last month. There's going to be,
It was just a thought as you're going through that space right now.
Yeah. No, I don't have the answers. I really am a believer, though, in helping people understand the vision and getting unified behind a common mission. Not a lockstep mission. Everyone brings their individuality to the table and brings something they're bringing to the opportunity. But they have to understand the direction we're trying to head together. And then they can use their creativity, their uniqueness, their individuality to promote that. And basically become more than the sum of your parts. I often say, we cannot be a company that fits in my head. If we are, then we failed. We have to be a company that's bigger than fits in any one of our heads.
That's a great point. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We're going to wrap it up. Feel free to do some more networking, and if you'd like to meet Travis, hopefully he'll stick around for a minute.
Yeah, I'll stick around.